New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof is facing major backlash and potentially lawsuits over telling the truth, over a report he put out regarding the sexual abuse and rape of Palestinian detainees by Israelis. Now, before we get into this story, we'll give a trigger warning. It's really important because, we're going to be discussing pretty graphic accounts from survivors of this abuse, which of course may be unsettling for some of you. So I just want to give you enough warning ahead of time. But with that said, here's a video that Kristof put out to, draw attention to his reporting. Take a look.
When Israel was attacked on October 7th, 2023, officials were quick to condemn the sexual violence of Hamas.
You've heard of the rape of Israeli women? Where the hell are you?
Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies.
Uses rape as a weapon of war?
Sexual violence as a weapon of war by Hamas?
I went to the West Bank to talk with Palestinians who experienced sexual assault firsthand by Israeli soldiers, settlers, and prison guards. Their harrowing accounts, backed by lawyers, surveys, and international reports, suggest that sexual violence by Israelis against Palestinians is widespread. And that raises the question, where is the revulsion against sexual assault now?
So, Cenk, I want to hear your 2 cents in just a second. But first, I want to share part of a post on X that Kristof made after the article was published, because he did get a lot of backlash from Zionists and Israel defenders. He says, whatever our position on the Middle East, we should be able to agree on being anti-rape. Sexual assaults were horrific when Israeli women were targeted on October 7th, and they're equally horrific when Israeli authorities use them against Palestinians day after day after day. We should be able to find common ground in opposing rape. For that, Kristof has my respect, because he might be the only person in legacy media who has made that point, which is something worthy of condemnation when it comes to our legacy media overall. But he stands out as someone who, breaks that rule, and I appreciate that. Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so what you're about to hear is some of the most depraved things I've ever heard in my life. So since there is no accountability for the Israeli guards, they're allowed to do the most sick fascist things you've ever heard. And that is not a hyperbole, as you're about to see. And shout out to Nicholas Kristof. And by the way, we always give credit where credit is due to the New York Times for publishing this today.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Like, I literally can't believe they published this. Yeah. But you're right, they deserve credit for doing so. Okay, so
look, I'm always happy to give credit. I wish I could give New York Times and mainstream media credit every day, but this is the exception that obviously proves the rule. And the fact that it's so groundbreaking, even though we've told you for months that this has happened, but the rest of the media absolutely refuses to print and to talk about Israel's war crimes and their sick fascism. So Kristof deserves a world of credit. But Anna, let's tell them what the Israelis have done.
So Kristof specifically reported out of the West Bank, where he spoke to numerous assault victims, including men, women, and children, who were brave enough to come forward with their stories. And they did so despite being warned that they would be killed or raped again if they did share their stories. So Kristof maintains that there is no evidence that Israeli leaders ordered the rape of Palestinians. However, according to a United Nations report from last year, it became one of Israel's standard operating procedures. They use that wording. And Sari Bashi, an Israeli-American human rights lawyer who is currently the executive director of the Public Committee Against Torture in Israel, told the Times the following. Rampant sexual abuse of Palestinian prisoners is a thing. It's been normalized. I don't see evidence that it has been ordered, but there's persistent evidence that the authorities know it's happening and are not stopping it, which I would venture to say is just as bad, because you are allowing for this abuse to be normalized, knowing that it will continue happening over and over and over again.
Yeah, now, Anna, I want to clarify one thing. When the authorities do not arrest people for this kind of abuse or have any kind of punishment, that is the equivalent of ordering it, because that's
Yeah.
saying, yes, it's totally acceptable for you to do this. And that's why the rape and the sexual assault by the Israeli guards are an epidemic. They're massive, massive. They won't stop doing it because their commanders have told them it's totally okay. There'll be no punishment whatsoever. So back to you.
So I'm going to read the account of Sami Al-Sai, a freelance journalist who was detained in 2024. Now, after being taken out of his cell, a group of guards threw him to the ground. And here's what he told Kristof. Quote, "They were all hitting me, and one stepped on my head and neck," he said. "Someone pulled my pants down. They pulled down my boxers. And then one of the guards pulled out a rubber baton used to beat prisoners. They were trying to force it into my rectum, and I was bracing myself to prevent it, but I couldn't," he said, speaking with increasing anxiety. "It was so painful. The guards were laughing at him," he said. "Then I heard someone say, 'Give me the carrots,'" he recalled, adding that they then used a carrot. "It was extremely painful. I was praying for death." He was blindfolded as they were abusing him like this, but he did hear someone say in Hebrew that, don't take photos, because these sick people, as we learned in other instances, like to tape it, like to record it, or like to take photos of it. Sometimes IDF soldiers incriminate themselves by brazenly posting abuse online, and that's how normalized it is. Because a majority of Palestinian prisoners are men, most of the rape and sexual violence is directed at them. However, you shouldn't mistake that as no women or children have been treated this way, because they have been. So Save the Children commissioned a survey last year of children ages 12 to 17 who had been in Israeli detention. More than half reported witnessing or experiencing sexual violence. Save the Children said that the true figure was probably higher because stigma left some unwilling to acknowledge what had happened to them. I'm going to give you one other story involving a survivor and what she went through. So one woman who was arrested after the October 7th attacks told Kristof that soldiers who arrested her threatened to rape her, her mother, and her young niece. Her prison ordeal began with a strip search conducted by female guards, but then a male soldier came in when I was completely naked, she added. For the next few days, she said, she was repeatedly stripped naked, beaten, and searched by teams of male and female guards alike. The pattern was always the same. Several guards, men and women together, would come to her cell, forcibly strip her naked, handcuff her hands behind her back, and bend her forward at the waist, sometimes forcing her head into the toilet. In this position, she would be beaten and groped all over, she said. They had their hands all over my body, she said. To be honest, I don't know if they raped me, because she sometimes lost consciousness from the beatings. And according to one journalist who was also detained in 2024, no one escaped sexual assaults. Not all were raped, I would say, but everyone went through humiliating, filthy sexual assaults. On one occasion, he said the guards zip-tied his testicles and penis for hours while beating his genitals. For days afterwards, he said he urinated blood. This is the country we are supporting, funding, literally going into more debt in order to support. These people are monsters, and I don't know, Cenk. Like, how do we get away from them? Like, how do we decouple? Like, we need to start having serious conversations, strategic conversations about making that happen. I will work with anyone. I don't care. Okay, this needs to stop. I don't want my money going to these demons. Okay. Anyway, back to you.
So they also use dogs to rape men. So 50% of the kids. Huge percentage of the men and the women, and they thought, they'll be so ashamed they won't tell anyone. Plus, as they were leaving the facilities, the Israeli guards would tell them, you better not tell anyone, otherwise we'll kill you and your kids and your parents. Why? Because they're terrorists. There's the Israeli government is the biggest terrorist organization in the world by the definition of terrorism. It's not hyperbole. It is just an empirical fact. Their civilian kill ratio is the worst in the world. They kill 100 times more people than innocent civilians than Hamas or Hezbollah. And they do the most sick, depraved sexual assaults and rapes of their detainees. And by the way, we call them detainees. And when they're hostages. When Hamas took hostages, we called them hostages. But in reality, Israel arrests tens of thousands of Palestinians on no charges. And for a lot of them, they never charge them with anything at all. But they do beat them. They starve them in those prisons. They oftentimes get diseases in those prisons. They rape them in those prisons. And that's what they do to their hostages. They're hostages because they never charge with any crimes. Israel takes 10 times more hostages than Hamas does, and they abuse them much worse than Hamas does. But they have a bunch of terrorist sympathizers in America that are all the cable news anchors and almost all of mainstream media, and their job is to protect the fascists. Their job is to protect the terrorists so you don't find out how they're raping people with dogs, because that's what the Israelis are doing. Guys, this is not about ethnicity, religion, or race. Fascism goes around the world. And it was in Germany before. It's not endemic to Germany. It's not there anymore. It wasn't there before. It's not there after. It's same thing in Serbia, same thing in Turkey, and now it's in Israel. And the reason it happens is really important for you to know, because that's how we're going to stop it. Because if you don't know why, you're never going to be able to stop it. It comes from two things. One is enormous victimhood complex. The Germans thought after World War I that they were the greatest victims in the world, and they've been so badly abused, and they needed to protect themselves. And against who? Against the entire planet. What does that sound like? It sounds identical to Israel. We're the biggest victims in the world, and we have to protect ourselves by murdering all of our neighbors. And then you hear the lunatics say it all the time, because once fascism sets in, there's zombies. So they say, well, if we let the Palestinians be free, they would kill us all. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do what you're doing because they're not fascists. Now, the reason they're not fascist, most, of course, countries and ethnicities, et cetera, aren't, is because they're lacking the second problem. So the Palestinians are plenty victim enough at this point. But the second issue that leads to fascism is out of control extreme power. The Germans wound up with an enormous military, and they easily conquered Sudetenland, Belgium, France, almost all of Europe, super easily. And Israel now seems to have unlimited power. And who's enabling that? We are. We give them infinite money. We make sure that no one on planet Earth is allowed to hold them accountable. That is literal. We go to the UN and go, don't you dare to criticize them for genocide. Don't you dare criticize them for starving Palestinian children to death. Don't you dare criticize them for any of their wars. So we protect them with Iron Dome physically. We protect them politically, diplomatically, financially, and we give them hundreds of billions of dollars. Again, that is a literal fact. And trillions of dollars in warfare on their behalf. So with this kind of unlimited power and the massive victimhood complex that they have in Israel, fascism is inevitable. So how do you stop it? You stop it by taking their power away. That's what's encouraging them and aiding and abetting them in their wild, out of control, rogue state that they are now. Cut the funding entirely, not 10 years from now. As I can't believe our media is giving Netanyahu credit. Oh, he's so generous. He only asked for 10 more years of funding. That is not generous. That is a robbery. End the robbery. So not one more dollar to Israel, and we'll be on our way to fixing it. But of course, our politicians and our media are way too corrupt. So they're gonna keep stealing your money and handing it over to Israel for more and more rapes and sexual assaults and murders and terrorism. That's all the Israelis have now.
All right, Micrograms in our Twitch subscribers community says that the IDF occupier that smashed a Jesus statue supposedly faced more consequences than any of these lunatics did. And he's right about that. He's right about that.
And Anna, can I just say something real quick?
No, hold on. Let me finish my point. Micrograms. The real question is how many Americans are informed about what the Israelis are really up to? Because I'm gonna skip ahead real quick. I wanna go to the Dana Bash video. That's video 4 here. Here's what Dana Bash says of the Palestinians versus the behavior of the Israelis. This is back in December of 2023. Here's what she says on CNN.
Rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom are women and children.
And it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
Well, Dana, I think
women.
we're not. I don't want this to be the hierarchy of oppressions.
Oh, the precious Israeli soldiers. I mean, they're a gift from God to the rest of humanity. They would never do anything bad. They would never rape like those dirty Muslims, right, Dana? Are you gonna correct the record on your show? Didn't think so. Back to you, Cenk.
Yeah, the reason why the Jesus statue got so much more attention was because it was in the spotlight. Once this is in the spotlight, then Israel apologizes as if it's an aberration, like a wild, wild aberration, because people like Dana Bash make sure that you don't hear all of their other crimes. That's their whole point, is to make sure they protect Israel at all costs. And here, an easy way to prove it in this case too. So did Dana Bash come out now? And by the way, these stories of the rapes have been around for a long time. It's just that the New York Times published it today or yesterday, right? So that gives it like, oh, it's legitimacy. We saw it from the Israeli press. There's nothing illegitimate about the Israeli press. So why didn't you report it then? No, shh. But even so, now the New York Times has reported it, so is Dana Bash gonna come out and apologize and say, I'm so sorry, you're right. Actually, the Israeli soldiers do rape and sexual assault way worse than Hamas. Based on the evidence, based on the empirical evidence, the number of cases that are proven, it's not close. The Israelis do systematic rape and sexual assault. So is Dana Bash gonna come out and apologize and say, I'm so sorry, I misled you? 0% chance of that. Instead, she's gonna call everyone an anti-Semite and say you're not allowed to talk about it. But the second thing, at that time, as you remember, or you just saw in the clip, there was 15,000 dead Palestinians. Now there's at a bare minimum 73,000 dead Palestinians. And the entire time Dana Bash has been saying, well, it's no big deal, it's no big deal, it's no big deal, it's no big deal. The only people complaining are anti-Semites, right? Well, these sick fascists that I see all over cable news protecting their fellow fascist friends in Israel. So now, Dana, when you were like, oh, 50,000, it's no big, yeah, it's a slight problem. Now, are you gonna come back and go 73,000? I can't believe they murdered tens of thousands more people. I'm so sorry for covering for them, for lying on their behalf, for pretending they were the victims. Are you gonna do any of that, Dana? No way. She's gonna come out and lie for Israel more so she could steal our money, so her friends in the Israeli lobby can take another $300 billion off of us and murder more Palestinian children, because it's never enough for Dana Bash. It's never enough how much money we have to give to Israel to slaughter and rape more people. Those are all facts. But she won't deal with facts. Instead, all they do is character assassination.
You know, anyway, look, I agree with you wholeheartedly on everything you said. We got to keep pushing. So let me move on real quick. And just note that Israel is trying to punish Nicholas Kristof for doing this report. So let's go to the Glenn Greenwald post. He says, America's most fervent Israel loyalists are trying to invent some mechanism in America that lets them or Israel sue the New York Times and Nicholas Kristof, if not execute them, for Kristof's column on Israeli abuses of Palestinian detainees, abuses long documented and well documented. These people are not our friends. These people are vicious, barbaric, and we should have nothing to do with them. We shouldn't support them, we shouldn't fund them, we should condemn them. And until we do that, we are complicit in these crimes against humanity. Raping children? I mean, we saw a gang rape of a Palestinian hostage on camera. And when there was gonna possibly be consequences for the IDF soldiers who engaged in that gang rape, by the way, the victim there, spent months in the hospital recovering because of his internal injuries. The society in Israel protested the mere consideration of consequences for those IDF soldiers. There's a sickness, a virus within that society right now, and we should not be supporting it or funding it.
Yeah, so look, guys, last thing here. Send all your love to Nicholas Kristof. And in fact, as much as I loathe the New York Times and the 99% of the articles on this are trash, you send some love their way because they published this. The only thing I care about is facts and reality, okay? So they deserve credit for it. So if you can, on whatever social media you're on, shout out to Nicholas Kristof and tell him we appreciate him. And not because he's supporting Palestinians, but because he actually supports the truth and is a real journalist. And God, we appreciate that. And then go and tell all the phony journalists, pretty much every cable news anchor, I'll minus Chris Hayes barely, okay? But tell all the rest of them they're terrorist sympathizers. I'm not joking. Go on social media and say, when are you gonna stop advocating for the terrorist government of Israel? They kill more civilians than anything on earth, any group on earth. And they have the worst civilian kill ratio.
Doctors, emergency aid workers.
Terrorists.
Yeah, they're terrorists. It's that simple. They're terrorists.
Our mainstream media are a bunch of terrorist sympathizers, and they should know that. You should shame them. You should shame Dana Bash and Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer and all of them, Rachel Maddow, everyone on Fox News, all support terrorism by Israel, all support a fascist state murdering and raping the Palestinians, now the Lebanese and the Iranians. And history will judge them as, again, the Goebbels of Israel's propaganda here and their efforts to destroy civilizations next to them and murder everyone in their path. And the Goebbels that allowed that to happen are your cable news anchors in America. They disgust me. Tell them that they're all terrorist sympathizers because they are.
Okay, Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel in our super chat says, remind me if October 7th happened here, meaning in the United States, or the real apartheid state. The umbilical cord and obsession with Israel is part of the United States, our country. This connection has to be snapped and disposed with or away. AIPAC really does hypnotize. Yeah, I mean, look, when your government is controlled by moneyed interests, that's when you open up the floodgates for foreign money to come in, or a lobby that's far more concerned with what's in the best interest of a foreign country to come in and buy our politicians. And that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. In addition to blackmail, I think.
Okay, look, here's another empirical fact. All of mainstream media hides from you that all of these lobbyists buy our politicians, and then our politicians vote with them every single time. And the lobbyists give hundreds of millions of dollars, collectively billions of dollars. Those are all bribes. They're not for the general welfare. They're not for charity. They're not for the American people. It's so that ExxonMobil can rob us. It's so that Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson can rob us. It's so that Israel can rob us. But the mainstream media says, shh, don't tell anyone about the robbery. Otherwise, our beloved friends who are in the donor class won't be able to rob every single American of every dollar that they have. Our news media in this country does not do news. It does the exact opposite. It buries the news. It gives you overwhelming propaganda. It is the most corrupt institution in this country. They're sick and they support terrorists and they support robbing you every single day. And not just Israel, all of the donors rob you. And your so-called news media never tells you about it. Instead, they protect the donor class, the lobbyists, and the scum politicians that run America.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.